All right, we continue to protect our home field. We will continue to fight to play as many games in this building as we possibly can. All right, there's a lot of great football out in front of us. But give it up for yourselves one time. 12 wins in the National Football League. 12 wins. All right, special football team in here. But we got to go earn everything that's out in front of us right now. And we are gifted absolutely nothing. We're going to have to grind, going on the road for 2 out of our last 3, including a short week this week. Can we be a championship team? All right, when it's not ideal terms, I believe we can. We've proved it already. All right, a lot of championship football out in front of this team, but we got to go earn it.
Everybody, he's Shane Falco. He's Drew. I'm Ted. This is Vikings Report with Drew, Ted, and Shane Falco.
Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever.
No, wait. It's Vikings Report with Drew, Ted, and Chris. Who's wearing a Shane Falco Ohio State Legend jersey?
See, had to get it in there. Had to do it.
Sure did.
I got you, man.
That's what she said.
We're starting
23
off
seconds
hot.
into the show. Yeah.
Chris is like Braveheart on Nobody Cares About Your Fantasy Team contest now, because all these people that were chasing Doc Proto, he's like the legend now. They're all on Chris on fire, going for a third straight week.
Yeah. I mean, like he's like doesn't win for what 12 weeks. Now Chris Gates is on fire.
You tell him I'm coming, and hell's coming with me. You hear? Hell's coming with me.
It's almost set a record this week. Second, 2 points away from the.
Like I set the record as earlier, like week 2 or 3, I think it was, right? Because
something like that, yeah.
Because Garrett Wilson went off against the Vikings. I believe it was that week, so it would have been week 5.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was that week.
Yep.
And then Chris says, well, fine, whatever.
But people can make a big jump when the first place guy has 134 and the second place guy has 81. I mean, that's how you make it up ground in this game. And Dan Lee is the new leader. Dan Lee did it.
The great rule change this year. And then if you pick like Ruby, who finished 4th, who only had like 40 points or whatever. Hi, Ruby.
She lives close enough to both of you to murder both of you. She
just texted, I'm going to get you for that. Yeah. The show's running great. The contest is running great, but not as great as our 12-2 Minnesota Vikings, who clinched a playoff spot this past weekend. They had already clinched a playoff spot before they even took the field. We're not going to thank that team from Wisconsin because the Vikings did it on their own. They would have done it on their own anyways by beating down the hapless Chicago Bears. As always, we want to thank our internet affiliate, Purple Pain Forums. Head on over to purplepainforums.com to get all your internet chat fixed. Don't go on to Vikings fan pages on Facebook, like in Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Don't go to Camelot.
On second thoughts, let's not go to Camelot. It is a silly place.
It is a silly place. They're just stupid. Drew, how many times we haven't started this thing? Drew and I have. Well, Drew did, and he points them out to me every time. The stupid idea of the day now is trading J.J. McCarthy and re-signing Sam Darnold. Every time he sees one, he tags me and says, "Look at this idiotic post." And now, what do I reply? What is my meme reply to all of these now, Drew?
I can't remember.
It's the kid with the face eating the apple.
Oh, the apple, that guy. We got him. Throw him up there.
That was one of our earliest memes from the show when we started doing it.
He's the reason we started. He's the Vikings Report kid.
And one of the reasons I liked writing for the Daily Norseman, which is Chris's website, the Vikings home on SB Nation, go to dailynorseman.com. Chris has been the lead blogger there since 2006. He still is. Bloggers come and go, but like Twinkies, Marcus Sherrills, and cockroaches, Chris Gates will survive a nuclear war. He doesn't do stuff like that. Anyways, we got a big show. We talked about Nobody Cares About Your Fantasy Team. Chris is on a 2-game winning streak. I got to try to get off the schneid. Ruby's got to. But basically, I've secured the regular season crown.
Yeah, you did.
Championship. Put it on the board.
You did. And for that, I'm going to try a little rapid fire real quick. You ready?
Yeah, go.
You got to remember your answers. There's 4 answers to this.
Okay.
Where did Anthony Carter go to school?
University of Michigan.
What was Dan Marino's number?
13.
Where did Chris Carter go to school?
The Ohio State University.
What was Fran Tarkenton's number?
10.
Say all your answers together.
Merry Christmas. Kiss my ass. Kiss his ass. Kiss your ass. Happy Hanukkah.
He almost got you. Got to admit, he almost had you there.
I feel like Joe Pesci. I had you. I had. How am I funny, Ted? I almost had him.
You think I'm funny? I'm funny how?
I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown. I amuse you. I make you laugh. I'm here to amuse you. What do you mean funny? Funny how? How am I funny?
All right. We're not doing a movie. We got some news we got to talk about. We're going to do the Seahawks Vikings preview. This Vikings team is on a roll this year. Loving the vibe coming out of Egan. But before we do that, hey, Ruby, if you don't mind, before you put some goofy edits regarding me, would you mind putting up this week's fantasy teams? So we're going to get right to the Vikings news. But Drew,
Yeah.
before we do that, buddy, what time is it?
Ted,
Mm-hmm.
I'm cooler than you are. So why don't you fix your little problems? Let's go to the Space Needle and let's light this candle.
He's right. Find Jim Jodat and light this candle.
He surely is. Let's light this candle.
Resume the countdown.
All right, I'm cooler than you are. Why don't you fix your little problems and light this candle?
He's right. Let's light this candle.
He surely is. Light the candle.
Yes. Resume the countdown.
Yes, we nailed it again. Sweet.
All right. Big news concerning a former Minnesota Vikings quarterback. And why are we talking about a former Minnesota Vikings quarterback? Because it pertains to the current general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Kirk Cousins has been benched in Atlanta. Last offseason, a lot of people wanted the Vikings to keep Kirk. He wanted a whole bunch of money. The Falcons gave him, Chris, I believe, was $100 million guaranteed.
Yep. 180 million overall, 100 million of which was guaranteed.
Over 3 years or
4.
4 years? I can't remember. 4 years?
45 million per.
That has lasted, 14 games? Kirk Cousins has been benched, leads the league in interceptions. He leads the league in fumbles. And the Falcons are going with Michael Penix Jr. as their starting quarterback, presumably for the rest of the season. The Falcons are not in the currently, if the playoffs would start today, the Falcons would not be in the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers lead the NFC South, but they are still very much in it. Cousins is now benched, something the Vikings would not do when he was here, when he was struggling. And I think that speaks to the foresight, Chris, of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
It does.
Thoughts
I
on
mean,
that?
they knew Cousins was coming off of the injury. They knew that, given when the injury happened and, given his, age, I mean, he's closer to 40 than he is to 30 at this point. Yeah, they knew that he wanted a longer-term commitment, and that's just not something the Vikings were willing to do. And, the Falcons were willing to throw 4 years and all that money at him, and now they got a problem on their hands because or if they cut him next year, they're looking at the same sort of thing the Vikings are this year with that big old dead money hit, but I think it's significantly larger for the Falcons than it was for the Vikings this year.
And Drew, Kirk's dead money is off the books after this year, and the Vikings have a lot, I think the 5th or 6th most cap space in the NFL come free agency next year. After the win over the Bears on Monday night, Kevin O'Connell moved ahead of everybody else and is now the front runner for Coach of the Year. Tell me why, Drew, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah should not be front runner for NFL Executive of the Year.
I think he should be.
Good answer. Good answer. I like the way you think.
I think they both are in the lead for that. The draft, we could talk about that if you wanted to. That's probably the only downside to what he's done since he's been here. But you look at the free agency class he put together this season for the Vikings. They talk about dodging a bullet with Cousins. I mean, it's like Lorena Bobbitt, the guy that dated her before Bobbitt.
Before John Wayne Bobbitt?
Yeah, the guy that dated her before that guy. That's dodging the bullet right there.
I couldn't stop bleeding.
That was the moment John Bobbitt realized his penis was cut off.
Dodged a bullet there, huh?
Yep. Among other things.
One big decision after another. He is the executive of the year. I mean, give me another guy that's going to be in the running for that. They're going to end up being these two guys, the GM and the head coach of the Vikings, what people are going to say, we need to get more like they are. That's going to start floating around the league because they got a good thing going in Minnesota, and they're building
Yeah.
it the right way. I mean, you look at all these other. I watched a couple Bears podcasts a couple days ago after the Vikings game. It's just so much different to hear them talk about their team and their franchise, and thank God we're not doing that. But the Vikings, what people got to realize, the Vikings this season is 12-2. With the cap space you mentioned, the Vikings are building something for the next 3 or 4 years, and not just this year. The Vikings are going to be a good football team in the running for a Super Bowl the next 3 or 4 years, I think.
Where the Bears are now is where the Vikings were at the end of the Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer era. They were rudderless. They had two guys butting heads with competing principles or ideals on where the team should go. You know, there was that report about Spielman just kind of going rogue and picking guys, and Zimmer literally walking out of the draft room after guys were picked. Compare that to the early years, the first couple drafts of Spielman and Zimmer, they were completely on the same page. And now you look at how Adolfo-Mensah and O'Connell are now. I mean, it's just, yeah, they're building something here that people need to pay attention to because it reminds me a lot of Bud Grant and Jim Finks and that early Purple People Eaters era. It's not going to be that era because free agency is here and guys like the Purple People Eaters are not going to stay together for a decade. But as long as those two stay on the same page, as long as the front office understands what type of personnel the coaching staff wants, it's going to be just as productive as that era was. I mean, O'Connell already has 2 12-win seasons under his belt. Bud Grant only had 4. I mean, that says something in and of itself in 3 years here? So you got a quarterback with 4 years left on his rookie deal, 5th or 6th month cap space heading into free agency next year. They got to work on some draft picks, but they're going to get rid of some older players. They're going to have, I think once the roster turns over, they're going to have one of the younger rosters. It's a good time to be a Vikings fan, kids.
It certainly is. And the Bears and the Vikings kind of reached the same spot at the same time. I mean, they both brought in their new management teams during the same offseason ahead of that 2022 year. And I don't know how many people the Bears interviewed for the GM job and the coach job. I just remember the Vikings interviewed like 9 or 10 people for the GM spot. And then when they hired Kwesi, they waited for a couple weeks because the Rams were on their Super Bowl run that year. And they decided that, out of all the people they interviewed, Kevin O'Connell was the one who was worth waiting for. And so, yeah, they waited until the Rams were done, and he was the last head coach hired that offseason because they had to wait for him. So I don't know what the Bears' philosophy behind what they did was compared to what the Vikings did, but yeah, the Bears have already fired their coach, their GM. I don't know how their GM makes it through this into another season. I don't think he does. But yeah, it took the Bears 3 years, and they're right back in the same spot they were.
So KOC, front runner for Coach of the Year. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah should be front runner for Executive of the Year. Intangibles, Drew. What do you got for intangibles?
Rain.
Yeah.
50 degrees weather, which is fine to play in, but it will be raining. I just don't know. I mean, it's almost up to 100% factor if it's going to rain or not. Just we don't know how heavy yet. So the Vikings are going to have to be on the lookout for that. And I know both teams got to deal with the rain, but that is certainly an intangible because we haven't had a lot of rain games this year. Let's see what this team's made of. And to bring in the fumbling factor, and like I said, the misjudging a punt. McDonald knows that they're going to have to make mistakes to lose this game, Minnesota. He knows that. So the rain will probably be a factor. They're probably happy it's going to be raining. But that's my intangible is the weather, how the Vikings going to trudge their way through it.
Yeah, for me, the Vikings are road warriors this year. They've only lost one time on the road, and that was in L.A., and that was after that home loss to Detroit, quick turnaround Thursday night game. Then they fell to 5-2, and everybody thought the wheels were falling off. Since then, they've managed to win 7 games in a row. They got something figured out, and I think it's going to be 8 in a row. The weather's going to be a factor. The Vikings are going to have to figure out how to deal with the weather. I put a tweet out on Twitter/X. I think after Detroit lost to Buffalo, I said something like the Minnesota Vikings now control their own destiny. I got a bunch of replies. Well, that means they're going to lose to the Bears and whatever. I'm so tired of that mentality because this Vikings team, Chris, I know you said one time that you were born right about the time the Vikings lost Super Bowl 11. You were just a few days older, a few months older, whatever.
3.5 months old the last time this team played in a Super Bowl.
Drew, you and I are old enough to remember. I think you remember all 4 Super Bowl losses. I only remember 3 of them. I also remember during those Purple People Eater era days that the Vikings didn't always win by blowouts. They won a lot of close games, but they always won. They always made a play when they needed to, whether it be on offense or on defense or special teams. And they were always the better prepared team. They were almost always the more disciplined team, and they almost always figured it out, whether it was in the first quarter, the third quarter, or the fourth quarter. And this team, this Kevin O'Connell coach team, since he's been here, reminds me of that era over these first 3 years, more than the Mike Zimmer era, more than the Burns era, more than any other era, because they're all on the same page, rolling in the same direction at the same time. Look, you can believe me or not, I don't care. I saw those Bud Grant teams. I see this Kevin O'Connell team, and there's a lot of similarities there. The players are different, but the mentality is the same. And I think that's the big intangible that this team has over just about any other team in the NFL.
Of all the franchises the Minnesota Vikings have played in their 60-plus year history, the lowest winning percentage they have against any franchise is against the Seattle Seahawks. They have played the Seahawks 18 times. They have won 6 games, including going 2 for 12 in Seattle. They haven't won in Seattle since 2006, the game with the Chester Taylor 95-yard touchdown run. They blew the Seahawks out. They've lost 5 in a row in Seattle since then. They've had their opportunities to win. They had that Monday night game during the COVID era where if Alexander Madison moves about 2 feet to the right, he gets a first down and they run out the clock. Ordinarily, like Drew said, with some of the teams in the Zimmer era and whatnot, you would expect that sort of thing to potentially be a factor. I don't think that kind of thing factors in with this team anymore. Not with Kevin O'Connell, not with the way this coaching staff has looked. This is the time for the Vikings to kind of get things right again in Seattle. And, they've got this game on the road. They've got the season finale on the road. These last 3 games, they got the toughest schedule in the league as far as opposing teams' winning percentage is concerned. And at this point, they're fully capable of winning all 3 of those games. And, Kevin O'Connell knows what this game means. His team knows what this game means. And I think the winning streak continues. So we'll give the Vikings the intangibles there.
You said the Vikings have the lowest winning percentage of any team against Seattle, against any other team.
Yes.
In any other coaching era other than Bud Grant, the Vikings would find a way to lose this game. They would have found a way to lose the Bears game last Monday night. They would find a way to lose the Packers game next Sunday, and they would find a way to lose the Lions game. One of those games or 2 of those games. Do you remember Jim Fossil, the old Giants coach?
Oh, yeah.
You remember that famous press conference he said, "I'm putting my chips all in. This team's going to the playoffs." And everybody laughed at him. They thought he was nuts. And I believe that was the year the Giants went to the Super Bowl.
That was the year the Giants crushed the Vikings, and then they went on and got crushed by Baltimore in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was the 2000 NFC champion, the 41 donut year.
Yep.
Like they're talking about firing him and all that other kind of stuff. He said, "I'm telling you right now, I'm all in. I'm putting all my chips in. This team's going to the playoffs. And I'm telling you right now, I'm all in with this team. This team is running the table. They're beating Seattle. They're beating Green Bay. And they're beating Detroit. And they're getting home field advantage for the playoffs. That's how much faith I have in this team. And if you guys want to run with this team's going to find a way to piss it away, get away from me. Because I'm done with that. This team is different. It's just different. They are. And you can believe it. You cannot believe it. I don't care. But this team, they were figuring out how to win in 2022. They dealt with a whole bunch of adversity and still almost made the playoffs with Josh Dobbs and Jaron Hall as your quarterbacks for over half the season. And Kevin O'Connell almost got them to the playoffs at the end of the year until the defense utterly collapsed out of pure exhaustion. This year, they're 12-2 with Sam Darnold in a rebuilding year. They're going to run the table. Take it away, gentlemen.
So your summary is they're going to win.
Yeah, bigly.
Chris?
Yeah, I think the Vikings win this one too, and I get a lot of the apprehension that the Vikings fans might have, like from what Ted said. And it's like I've said a lot of times on this show before, Minnesota Vikings fans aren't happy unless they're not happy. When this team does finally win a Super Bowl, half the people are going to miss it because they're going to be just waiting for the other shoe to drop and waiting for something bad to happen. This team has a special feel to it, man. I mean, the 2009 team had a special feel, the 2017 team. This team might be better than either of those teams. Yeah, they've got a tough schedule going forward, but there's no reason to think that they can't pull this off. And for the first time since 1998, be the number 1 seed in the conference. So I'm all in. I'm right with Ted on the on the old bandwagon here. Not bandwagon, that's the wrong term because we've been fans of this team for forever. On the train, I guess, is a more accurate term for this one.
My summary is the Vikings got 6 games left. This will be the easiest win of the final 6. McDonald knows he's up against it this week. One thing he learned from coaching under both Harbaughs is that you don't try to mask anything and play around with something you know you don't have. He knows he's going to need turnovers, bad miscues by the Vikings to pull this thing out. McDonald knows it. His attack's going to be, we have to run the football. It's very easy to research Seattle and see what they want to do. They have 17 rushing touchdowns and 14 passing touchdowns. Come on, guys. You can see what they want to do. They want to run the ball. They want to keep Jefferson on the sidelines. They're a running team, but they're a finesse team. McDonald knows he's going to need a bunch of problems by the Vikings to win this game. That said, I put all the numbers in the Drewster machine, and I have a summary for this game. I got Vikings 40-14.
Whoa.
I got 3 interceptions by the guys I mentioned earlier, Griffin, Harrison Smith, and Gilly. I got JJ with 2 touchdown catches. I got a safety by Van Ginkel. And my spiciest hot take, all that stuff said, this is the best one. Jalen Naylor will have a touchdown, but not only a touchdown catch, Naylor will have his career high 6 catches this week. Because Seattle's rolling everybody to Addison, and I know McDonald, being the defensive mind he is, he didn't let Jefferson and Addison beat him. 6 catches and a touchdown, Vikings 40, Seattle 14.
All right. You had a milestone to wrap it up there, Drewster?
I do, and it's a personal milestone on my part. It's not the Vikings this week.
Okay.
At kickoff Sunday at 3 o'clock p.m. God's time. Where's my sheet? Wait.
It's your own milestone, and you had to write it down.
Okay, milestone. At 3 o'clock p.m. come Sunday, when we take on the Seahawks at kickoff, it will be 19,817 days since I became a Viking fan, and I'm still waiting for a Super Bowl. 19,817 days. If you're keeping track at home, that's 28,536,480 minutes I've been waiting for a championship. 28, as Will Smith would say in I Am Legend, million. 28 million minutes I've been waiting for a championship. I've been waiting so long for a championship, you could have watched Die Hard 217,000 times. I got it figured out.